Hello friends, my name is Shivam from DevOps Schools and I will help you to enable your learning process in various technologies of DevOps, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data and many more. This is our initiative to help you by sharing multiple tutorials and videos. And if you want any specific tutorials or any particular topic, then please do comment in the below comment section and I will help you with it. Also, please subscribe to our premium services on YouTube, which will give you access to more content and videos to enhance your knowledge about all these topics. Also, if you want me to help you with regards to the online trainings and classroom sessions by our qualified trainers, then please do write me at contact@devopsschool.com. Thank
Now, who can serve this particular purpose? Correct. If I say 2 raised to 4 would be 16, 2 raised to 5 would be 32, 2 raised to 6 would be 60. So my H would be 60, H would be 6. Correct. Once again, same story would be there. But problem would be something like this. I'm dividing the network based on maximum number of hosts. Correct. So you can see if I go for H is equal to 6, that means maximum 2 raised to 6, that is the number of hosts which I am getting per network. That means 64 minus 2 is equal to 60. So I'm divided this network in a such a way that I'm able to get all IP address requirement based on maximum number of hosts. Correct. This is how we are doing the subnetting. But you can look at carefully what is the problem coming. If I give 64 IP address to this department number 1, they are using 50 out of it. Still you can see 10 IP address is waste. What is that? It is waste. But still it is okay that out of 64 they are almost using 50 IP address. That's okay. Rest of the IP address maybe they can reserve for the future. Here also 40, it is again okay that out of 64 you are using 40 IP address, 22 IP address you are still waste. It is completely not usable for you. But look at these two cases. Unnecessarily you are putting so many IP address in waste. You have done the subnetting, no doubt about that. But what subnetting rule says, whatever maximum host you required, you need to do the subnetting based on that method. And whatever number which is coming from here, you need to apply that methodology to all the subnets. This is what we are doing, correct? So we divided this entire network into 4 parts, and every part contains 64 IP address. But here you can see I'm only using 10 IP address. What about the rest of the IP address, which is completely waste? Whether it's a free IP address, but still it is unusable for me, correct? Now, to avoid such kind of a problem, there is one technique. It is called as Vlsm, that is a variable length subnet mask. Okay. Now, this method helped me to avoid this wastage as well. Correct. Now, what actually this will happen? Method is same. Whatever I told you, it is same. There is no change, but additional benefit is available in Vlsm. Okay. If I did the subnetting, what 50 is required, correct? So what I will do, I will give my first network to this 50, no doubt about that. So if I say how Vlsm is working, I will show you how to do that. Calculation wise, it is same. There is no difference between the calculation. So if I consider, okay, let's go for this 50 first. Let's see, you can do the 50 and let's find out what we can get it in 50. So we know that h is equal to definitely 6, because that is the only value who can serve this particular purpose. Okay, so we will follow the same method. Okay, h is there. Then what is the total number of network bit actually required? It is something you just need to remove this from your actual host, so you can see 2. So my n is equal to 2. So how much total network bit which we are having? Total network bit is equal to 24 plus 2 is equal to 26. Correct? This is right. I am doing with respect to this host. Okay, I am doing subnetting only, no doubt. This is the same method which I am doing, no change. Correct. Now, if I would like to go ahead, what would be the subnet mask in this case? It would be 255.255. Sorry, 255.255.190. Correct. Agree. So how many subnets would be there? There would be the subnet called as 2 raised to 2. Okay, because this is my network. That means 4 networks would be there. And every network which contain what? Every network contain my total number of machine would be 2 raised to 6, means 64. Actually usable would be 62. So we can say 62 would be usable. Correct? So what would be my first network? The first network would be 192.168.1.0 to 192.168.1.63. So total 64 would be there. So what I will do, I will assign this network for this department. No doubt. This is the same method which we have done. No problem at all. What I will do, I will assign this to this particular network. No problem. Okay. My next network would be, if I keep doing it, I need to keep adding 64 in each subnet. Now my next network ID would be 192.168.1.64. Correct? 2. I just need to add 192.168.127. Correct? Now in VLSM, what benefit we are getting? Now currently we are not getting the benefit for this, okay, because this IP address also use the same one. But in case if this IP address requirement is 30, for the time being, we change it from 40 to 30. Okay, so you will understand what will happen now. Can I use the same IP range? Yes, you can do that, but that will waste your almost 32 IP addresses. Then what VLSM give me? They said you can once again do the subnetting according to this host requirement, and whatever next network you required from this point onwards, you can use the subnetting methodology with this. So if I say, if I would like to go for 30, then my H would be what? H would be 5. It's 32. Yes, this is correct requirement. Then how much networking bit I am getting? Correct. N is equal to 3. 8 minus 5. Correct. So how much network bits which we will have in total? So total would be 24 plus 3 is equal to 27. Correct. Only 3 bits. So what would be the subnet mask? The subnet mask would be something like this: 255.255.255.192. 192 means 64 plus 128. 192 plus 32. Correct. What is the value? My calculation is not good, so best way to use the calculator. So 128 plus 64 plus 32. It's 224. Correct. Okay. Now, what is the number of machines I'm getting over here? It is h 2 raised to 5 means 32. Then rather going for this 64, I should go only for 32 over here. So the next IP address would be 192.168.1. You just need to add 32 into this 64. Okay, so actual number would be something which we can is called as 96. Usable would be only 30. So what actually I did, I subnetted once again this particular network as per this requirement. Then what is the subnet mask? Subnet mask would be this one. Subnet mask would be this one. Subnet mask for be this one, because I subnetted my network as per my host requirement. This is why it is called as Vlsm, variable length subnet masking. As per the requirement, I started dividing my single network as per my requirement. Normal subnetting, what he will do, you will get one maximum number and keep dividing your network with the help of that maximum number, which we have done. If I keep doing that, I will keep adding 64 all the time, because this is the maximum number which I have. But do I require that particular thing that will serve my purpose? Obviously that will do that, but the problem would be IP address wastage would be more. Correct? So we do have another method called as Vlsm. Now what Vlsm is doing, calculation wise it is same, no doubt. The only reason behind it, for my first network, I calculated everything with my required host. For my second requirement, I calculated this subnet with this requirement. For the next host, I will calculate one more time with his requirement. Correct? And I will define everything into this. That will saved my lot of IP addresses. Correct? So this is called as the technique Vlsm. Okay, this is very beautiful. This will solve most of the problem which was available in subnetting. Correct? Still, people are using Vlsm a lot. Correct? Because Vlsm is a beautiful technique. In majority of enterprise environment, people are actually try to save the IP address. Correct? So they can use that IP address for something good or something which they really required, rather going for a waste. Correct? So Vlsm is very much adapted technology or technique which we are using in order to distribute the IP address across our enterprise environment. Calculation wise, you have to recalculate everything once again based on your requirement. Correct? Here also I get the perfect IP addressing. I have done the subnetting one more time. Okay, but writing wise, remember that this is already used. This subnet is already used. Okay, I will once again confirm it. You are not supposed to use this subnet as at all, because this is already been used for this network. You are doing the subnetting one more time calculation wise. Correct? But giving the IP address which is out of this range. This is, remember that you are not going to calculate 1.0 again. You just need to find out the range, subnet mask, and how many bit you want to mask, and whatever remaining IP addresses which you have, you can apply this methodology to your remaining set of the IP addresses. Now, if I would like to go for 97, 1.97, and if I would like to subnet it according to 10, I should use that after 97.
Hey viewers, our Mastery in DevOps engineering program can help you to hone the skills necessary to succeed in high-level DevOps positions. So, what are you waiting for? Enroll now and earn certification that show you are keeping pace with today's technical roles and requirements. Contact info is mentioned in the video sidebars and in the description box. Book your seats for the upcoming batches now.
I will do the calculation and I will add that particular thing after 97. Correct? So this is a very interesting method which is available in subnetting. Correct? Is it clear to all of you what is subnetting and what is variable length subnet masking? Calculation wise, calculation is same. The only difference is in our normal subnetting, we will take the highest value requirement, we will do the subnetting, and we will equally create a subnet based on the range which we got. The problem with that particular method is sometimes your range is very big, your requirement is very small, but you have to maintain that range because the maximum requirement was up to that. Correct? So that is the challenging thing. So here we have a solution. We can do the subnetting as per our requirement. The one example which I gave you, my maximum requirement was 50, so I done the subnetting. I take one range from my main network, but my next requirement is 30. I cannot took the same requirement over here because the west of the IP address would be there. Lot of IP address I'm going to do the west over here. Correct? So rather wasting that IP address, what I will do, I will recalculate the value as per my 30. Whatever outcome would be coming over there, I will apply that particular subnetting methodology what with the next range which is available. Correct? So this is very interesting thing in order to save our IPv4 addresses, or you can say properly utilized our IP addresses. Correct? Is that clear? Any doubt in subnetting? Now there is a concept called as supernetting also. Okay, we will discuss that, but not today, but we will discuss that from tomorrow actually. Okay, supernetting is one more type of subnetting which we can use it. Correct? It is also calculation is same, calculation wise no change is there, but little bit tricks and tips in order to save the IP addresses. That's it. Correct? Is that clear? This both the concept you need to clarify. If someone comes to you, give you either a subnet, sometime either it will give you some CIDR value, sometime it will give you some random IP address and ask you to find out the complete range. Are you able to do that? Because such type of questions they will ask you in your questions when you are going for certification. Correct? That is a simplified, because that is a very time consuming process when you are solving that question. Certification wise, there is a limited time. Correct? So you have to make sure that you have to practice a lot so you can memorize the things. The 2 to the power, it's very important thing you need to memorize it. Correct? Second concept which we have seen is called as VLSM. VLSM is a technique which will help you to do the subnetting based on the required host you want. Correct? So this is also help you to save the IP address. I hope both the points are clear here. Any doubts in this? Kindly put it on a chat if you have any doubts, or everything is clear. You can say yes, it is clear, sir. You can give us any type of any complex example, methodology, we remember it, we will be able to solve it. Okay. Only Chaitra say it is clear. Okay. Okay, Sabreshwaran is saying, Bo, it is clear. So I hope it is clear to all of you. Please, guys, if you have any doubts, you have a chat window, you can put it on a chat window, correct? Or else you can simply unmute yourself. You can ask me the question. Don't hesitate to ask me any question at all. Yes, I will give you more example to solve it. Don't worry about that. Correct? Understand? I have multiple question based on that, which is actually equivalent to the certification. So I will provide you all the set of questions which you can try to solve. Correct? Along with answer key, I will give you the answer key as well. So check whether your answer would be able to match it or not. So I gave you very simplified way. You can, if you see in a Google also or in YouTube, there are multiple ways are available. This is one of the simplified way to solve these problems, which is very quick, and that will save a lot of time in your certification. So that would be much more appreciated. Okay. Now let's talk about, we have seen the IP addresses, that's fine. But how to set this IP addresses? This is again a question, correct? How we can set this IP addresses to our system? That means how to configure the IP addresses. Now, what are the different ways to do it? There are two different ways to handle the IP addressing. Either it is a static IP address, correct? A static IP address configuration is pretty simple. You just need to go to your computer network and sharing center. Okay, you will go to the TCP IP properties and you can set up your static IP address over here. So if you go here, you go to the properties side. Okay, open network and sharing center. Now I don't have a static IP address, but I will show you where you can go in order to see it. You might be aware of this, but still I am going to explain it. This is the Wi-Fi. Now I'm interested in Wi-Fi because I'm connected with the Wi-Fi. If I'm connected with the wire, I would be saying Ethernet. Okay. So if I go to the network and sharing center, this is Windows 10 actually. They do have some things. So you can see there is a properties button. Click onto the properties. This is a IP TCP IP property. Currently it is saying obtain an IP address automatically and obtain a DNS server automatically. Correct? Here, if I choose use the following IP address, I need to mention IP address, subnet mask, default gateway. Along with that, I need to provide the preferred DNS and alternate DNS as well. That's fine. So currently, I'm not interested to set up any IP address. So I simply say close, 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 and I will close the window. So the first method for IP configuration is that I could manually put the IP addresses to my machine, which I shown you under the TCP IP properties. Correct. So this is very, very suitable for small network which you have. It is very, very suitable method for you. Simply go to the properties, set the IP address manually and save it. Let's agree. What if you have huge network, correct? In our huge network or enterprise network, We will not prefer to have static IP configuration. Otherwise, manual process of setting up the IP addresses would be difficult. Correct? So that's why in our enterprise environment, we are using a method called as DHCP. Does anybody knows about this? This is called as Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. Correct? The purpose of this particular type of protocol is to share the IP addresses across the network. The purpose of this is to share. It is not sharing the IP address. It will share the IP address. It will share gateway. It will share your DNS numbers as well, your DNS server as well. All this information would be given to your machines automatically. Currently, you got the option that obtain an IP address automatically. This is why, because I have a DHCP server on my wireless router. Correct? And because of that, I am getting automatic all these three information from there. Correct? This is what you're saying in this particular chapter. Correct? Static and dynamic IP addressing. Static means a simple IP address. I shown you that use the following IP address. Put that IP address over there. Subnet mask over there. Default gateway over there. This is the static IP address configuration. Sometime you require it, but I told you it is the most reliable method which you can use if you want to have a smaller networks. Second method, on the same options, we do have an option called as obtain an IP address automatically. Now we have seen what is the classes of IP address, how subnetting is happening. Now we need to implement it. So either I can implement it with manual process, or either I need to maintain it with the help of DHCP server. DHCP is actually protocol who can help to get an IP address from the server. I will explain you how it is happened actually. Okay, but because that is also important fact for you to understand. Correct? Now this is a static assignment. Now this is a DHCP server. So every DHCP server do have some scope. I will discuss that particular process. There is a DHCP lease process that you will be getting the IP address on the lease for 8 days. Okay, this is the DHCP lease process. Okay, let's understand how we can work with DHCP servers. Majority of organization do have DHCP servers to provide IP address, DNS server, gateway. If you would like to have Win server, I would use DHCP server in order to share this information across the network. Now DHCP server is an implementation, correct? But actually it is working on a protocol called as dynamic host configuration protocol. This is working at an application layer, correct? Based on this protocol, they have configured a server called as DHCP server. So let's take an example. If I say, okay, I do have a DHCP server. Now DHCP server could be a Windows server, or it could be a Linux server. It could be anything, correct? In DHCP server, it is working on a protocol called as DHCP protocol. And let's say I do have some of the clients. I do have a couple of clients, correct? Now my DHCP server is actually connected to my network with the help of switch. Okay, I do have a switch. Now my computer is also connected to the switch. Okay, my DHCP server is also connected to the switch. Now these are my client. These are my client. Now client means our laptop, tablet, or whatever things which we require. Now, what exactly happened? How DHCP will provide you IP and other information to the client? Now here it is mentioned about a process. Okay, this is a process. We can call it as DORA process.
Hey viewers, trying to get into DevSecOps? Enroll for our DevSecOps certified professional programs and earn the certification that shows you are fit for these technical roles and requirements. Contact info is mentioned in the video sidebars and in the description box. Book your seats for the upcoming batches now.
Correct. This is the process. We can call it as DORA process. Remember that process name is called as DORA. Correct. Now understand how this DORA process is actually work. Correct. Now, whenever your client machine is actually turned on, let's say I turn on this particular client machine. Now, while booting that particular machine, he actually tried to find out the IP address. Correct. If he couldn't find out the IP address, he will try to discover. Okay, he will send some discovery signal. Now these are all broadcasting signal. Okay, the first message he will say discover. Correct. Now what exactly client is discovering? Correct. The client is discovering, is there anyone who is giving me the IP address? Is there is someone? Correct. Okay, sometime this particular computers, if you do have, he couldn't find out any particular IP address, then also he proceed. But remember that whenever your machine is turned on and he's looking for some IP address for your network connectivity. Now he said that I don't have any static IP address, you are selected automatic method. Then there has to be someone who can give me that particular IP address. Correct? Then actually your client is looking for DHCP server. He's sending some broadcasting messages. That particular process would be considered as discover. He's trying to find out, is there any DHCP server? Correct. Now some signals comes to my DHCP server. Then DHCP server will understand, oh, someone is looking for some IP address. Should I offer him an IP address? Then the second request would be coming as an offer. Okay, this is second O, that is a DORA. You can see in this diagram also, the second request is coming from offer. Now this is not broadcasted. Your client is broadcasting because he don't know who is the DHCP server. Who is the server who is going to provide me the IP address? I don't know. Correct? But whenever DHCP server received this broadcasting message, he responded back to the same client. He said, hey, you are looking for IP address? I am DHCP server. Should I offer you any IP address? He said on that particular request he received on the client side, then client said yes. Correct? This is the DHCP server in this particular network. Correct. Then third thing what he will do, he will request some IP address from DHCP server for on lease. Now this is on lease. You're not the owner of the IP address anymore. You will get this IP address on lease for 8 days. Okay, 8 days that IP address would be available at your place. Correct. So he requests some IP address. He said, yes, you are a DHCP server. I come to know that now, but kindly give me some IP address. Correct. He's sending the request. Then this DHCP server acknowledge that request and will provide all the IP information to him, which he can configure. He will say, acknowledge that particular information which he required. He will acknowledge it and send all the IP information to that particular client. This is how DHCP lease process works. Correct? This is how internally happen. That process is called as DORA. So whenever your computer is connected, if it is turned on, correct, and he's not getting any IP address, what is the first thing he do? He try to discover anyone who can provide me the IP address. Then if there is a DHCP server, that DHCP server says, can I give you the IP address? They will offer you some IP address. But IP address is not given that time. He will say, I am the one, should I offer you? Then my particular client once again understand, okay, there is someone called as DHCP server, correct, who is offering me the IP address. Then he said, okay, request. That means he's requesting some IP address available, correct? Then once that request come to the DHCP server, then DHCP server acknowledge that request and give them IP address, DNS server, gateway, all the necessary information which is running on a DHCP protocol. It would be given to the client for 8-day lease. Now this time can be changed. So for next 8 days, that information would be given to you. Correct? Now this is a function called as DHCP. Now DHCP is a protocol. On that particular protocol, the server is implemented. DHCP is running on an application layer protocol. Correct? Now there is a concept called as scope. In DHCP, there is a concept called as scope. Scope means the range of the IP addresses. I can have multiple scopes. It could be, correct? Scope is nothing but set of the IP address range which I need to give to the client, correct? So I do require to configure the scope on the top of your DHCP server. I need to configure the scope. I need to provide the name to the scope. I need to provide, okay, from this IP address from 100 to 120, all this 20 IP address to be the part of this scope. The gateway for this particular scope, DNS server for this particular scope, correct? Scope is nothing but a defined range which DHCP server can offer you from, correct? Now how DHCP server is going to map this, how DHCP server will be able to manage this? Now remember guys, DHCP server always keep a table, a maintenance table, or they maintain a complete table of MAC address and IP addresses. Now this is not ARP table which we are talking about. This is a table of DHCP server where DHCP server will come to know that which IP address is assigned to which MAC address, correct? And under which scope it is coming up. Under which scope it is coming up and which address is having which MAC address assigned to it. My computer would be identified by DHCP with their MAC addresses. Remember that, correct? There is one more concept called as reservation. Like the scope, there is a concept called as reservation. Now I can reserve some IP addresses. For example, if my server, now typically servers are not connected to the DHCP server at all. By default, they do have a static IP address. But in some cases, let's assume that your client, this client is reserved. That means I'm expecting a specific unique IP addresses should be provided to such clients. So such kind of reservation is also possible on the top of DHCP server. If I reserved some IP address not to be shared or to be shared, correct, to some certain type of computers only, that is also possible. Now computer means you need to tell him, okay, this is the MAC address, you have to provide him this IP address all the time, it is fixed, correct? But remember guys, till 8 days, if the IP address is leased to you, that IP address won't be changed at all. If you turn off the computer, turn it back on, for the lease time, that IP address would remain same 100%, because it is on the lease of 8 days. It would not be given to anyone actually, correct? But what if the lease period is getting expired, correct? Remember that before this lease is expired, my DHCP server actually try to communicate to the client one more time. Let's say this particular IP address would be given to this particular client. Now it has been 7 days now. Okay. Now only 1 day is required to expire the lease because it was on the lease. But before it get expire, client, if it is turned on, remember that there are conditions. If your client is turned on, DHCP will start asking him, look, your lease is going to expire tomorrow. Would you like to increase the lease? If my computer say yes, then once again that lease would be once again double. That means 8 to 16 days. Means more 8 days would be added. He keep adding that default date which is available on the top of DHCP server, which you can change. It is just a configuration. By default, it is 8 days. So remember, how we can set up the IP address in our enterprise environment is completely depend on us. Manual process would be there, automatic process would be there. If you want it has to be happen automatic, then you need to configure the DHCP server in your organization. DHCP server work on a protocol called as DHCP, which is a dynamic host configuration protocol, which works on application layer, layer 7. The duty of this protocol is to provide IP address, to provide default gateway, to provide DNS server, all that information to my clients. And how it is going to happen? It is happen because of the DORA process. DORA is a process which is running on the server and the client, correct? Whenever your client is turned on, and if does not have any IP address given by your DHCP server, he will try to discover the DHCP server. If you find out, then DHCP server offer him some IP address. He requests something for a specific set of IP address. He requests IP address. Offer means he said, I am the one. Would you like to take the IP address from me? This is an offer. Then he said, yes, I want the IP address. That is a request. And finally, acknowledgement. He said, okay, you asked me the IP address. I acknowledge it to you. And then IP address and all the information would be released from my DHCP server. There is a concept called as reservation. There is a concept called as scope. Scope is nothing but, in a simple understanding, the range of the IP address which you would like to distribute through the DHCP server. This would be considered as scope. I can have multiple scope on the top of single DNS server. Yes, it is possible. Reservation also can be possible, that I can reserve some IP address to be assigned to specific computers only with the help of the MAC address. Now there is one more concept is available called as DHCP relay agent. Now this is very, very important. DHCP relay agent. Okay. Now this DHCP relay agent, understand what these techniques are. Now let's understand. This DHCP server, okay, he's sending me the IP address of this range 192.168.1.0, this network, correct? Now I do have this DHCP server. I do have one router over here, and this router is connected to the switch. And after this router, I do have one more network available. Now this network which is behind this particular router, now this is my complete LAN on one side. This is a complete different LAN which is connected on the same router, but it is completely different network, because I told you in the router, if you change the interface, this interface to have different IP address, this interface to have a different IP address. So I do have a different network over here, and that network will start with the IP address 10 dot something, 10.x.x. Now my requirement is something like this. I want to share the IP address to this network as well, to this 10 dot network as well. So can I create another DHCP server for this network, or should I use a single DHCP server to be given to IP address to all the network?
Hey viewers, are you looking for formal training on SRE practices? Take our SRE program. This course will teach you how to successfully implement site reliability engineering in the modern day 24/7 services. Kickstart your SRE training today. Contact info is mentioned in the video sidebars and in the description box. Book your seats for the upcoming batches now.
Now the concept is called as you required DHCP relay agent. There is one more activity, or there is one more server which could be considered as DHCP relay agent. The job of the DHCP relay agent is only take the IP address and allow it to cross this particular router and give it to another network. Otherwise, DHCP server can work within a single local area network. He cannot be able to cross the router at all, correct? But if I would like to do that, I should have a DHCP relay agent who can help us to distribute the IP addresses, not just the local, across your router as well, to different networks as well. So this is the basic functionality of your basic DHCP server. This is very, very important technique which we required in order to distribute the routers. Okay. Now this is very important. A PIPA. You might be coming through this. Okay, this is called as automatic private IP addressing, whose starting range is 169.254.0.1 to 169.254.255.254. Now remember that any range of any IP address coming with this, it would be an APIPA IP address. APIPA means it is automatically generated by your computer. I told you that your every computer, if they are trying to get the IP address, they will send a discover signal. I told you, if that discover signals won't be find out any IP addresses or any server who can send any IP address to him. So in a simple example, if this client going for discovery, she's trying to send broadcasting messages and saying, oh, let me know who is DHCP server, let me know who is DHCP server, and I couldn't get any response from anyone because I don't have a DHCP server at all. Then what will happen? Should I get failed? Yes, you should, correct? But you should get one IP address which would be automatically generated, and this is what APIPA comes, correct? You can see APIPA is not the practical version for DHCP lease. After the DHCP lease period is expired, you will not get an APIPA at all. APIPA address is automatically coming to your computer, generated by your computer. You won't be able to communicate anywhere with APIPA because it's a class B IP address. Sometime if you have a DHCP server in your organization, by any chance your clients are not able to communicate with DHCP servers, DHCP server not be able to give you any IP address due to some troubleshooting steps. After a certain time, my computer will get an automatically IP address, that is APIPA. Correct? APIPA IP address will not be the IP address who can connect you to the network by default. It is not routable, it is not configurable, correct? But majorly people can use it within local area connection, but outside the local area connection means if you want to cross to the layer 3, it is not technically possible, correct? So understand, APIPA is a kind of IP address which is generated by the computer, whose starting range would start with 269.254. Any given point of time, if someone is not able to offer you any IP address, you tried a lot but you couldn't got the IP address, then your system, your operating system itself will generate one IP address. That IP address will be APIPA, and with the help of APIPA, maybe that you will be able to connect below the local area connection, but your with the help of APIPA IP address, you won't be able to communicate to your network layer, or you won't be going outside world. It is saying non-routable sometimes, correct? So important note for APIPA, that if your computer is connected to the DHCP server and if you are getting any IP address with 269.254, okay, that means you are not connected to the network. You are not getting any IP addresses at all, correct? Now this is the diagram that your DHCP server is unavailable, your network communication is not happening. Any certain cases you are not getting any IP address from the DHCP server, then APIPA would be generated automatically, correct? Okay, now host name. We have seen the IP address. Now we are going to see host name. Now, what is host name actually? You can see on your computer, if I go to CMD, okay, now this is the name given to this computer. Correct? Now this is the computer provided by lab. So this computer do have a unique name. Now the name given to a machine over the network. Okay. Now people say, why we are providing the name actually? Now it is only for ease of administration, correct? People can easily identify the name rather going for IP addresses. Okay. Some people would be comfortable to memorize the IP addresses, no doubt about it. Majority network administrator can identify everything with the help of IP addresses. That's fine, correct? But normal business people, management people, or somewhat support people, or anything, they don't know anything about IP addresses. They don't know anything about what IP address. They won't be able to memorize it. So how they can identify these services or your servers? they will identify it with the help of their unique names are available. Correct? So this is very, very important. Every machine do have its own name. Correct? Once you connected your network to your device would be able to understand your MAC address. They will be able to understand your IP address. They will also try to understand your name on the machine. Remember that. So host name, it's a unique name which is assigned to your computer, which will help you to make your life easier when you are accessing that particular name. Correct? This is something very, very interesting technique. Now there is a domain for this. Now domain is something which is a bigger than our, you can say this is a logical concept. Now your company is nothing but it's www.capgemini.com. So what is Capgemini? So capgemini.com, it's nothing but a complete domain for the Capgemini. Okay, domain is nothing but it's a logical group which we are going to create. So it's a logical boundary which you are assigning, and that logical boundary help you to manage it properly. Correct? So every logical domain do have specific name. Correct? Now you do have the logical name called as Capgemini. Correct? Now you have a bangalore.capgemini.com, that is a Bangalore location. Pune.capgemini.com, that is a Pune location. But you're coming under the single umbrella that is called as Capgemini. So Capgemini is nothing but a logical entity. Okay. This particular logical entity will help you to go to the internet and publish a website. This logical entity will help you to identify your resources properly. Correct? So name is very important for your manageability. Domain is nothing but a logical grouping of your devices together which you can identify it properly. Domain name is nothing but unique name. Now they are saying identify website on the internet. That is a very basic function. We know that. We should have a domain name, but domain name also will be very impactful in our organization, because with the help of domain name, we would be able to find out in which Capgemini you are located, where you are sitting. Correct? Sometime based on your location also, companies can change their particular domain and subdomain. Correct? So domain is nothing but a logical group which you are going to create it with the help of all the devices which you need to manage under that logical entity. Domain name, it's a unique identity for the domain which you have created. Anyone wants to connect it over the internet as a website, you can use it. And anyone who want to access the resources within the organization, they can also use it without any problem. Correct? Then what is FQDN? Okay, now it is called as fully qualified domain name server, or fully qualified domain name. Now let's say this client, okay, this client name is called as Mangesh. Okay, this is the name of the client, and this is test one. Okay, so the Mangesh and test one is what? Mangesh and test one is the name of that particular machine. We can call it as a host name. And after that, this is my company network. So for this entire company, I created a logical grouping of all these connected devices, and I would completely say this domain would be, say, capgemini.com. Okay, I will say Pune dot, I am located in Pune, so it is pune.capgemini.com. So this is the domain name, which is a logical boundary of Pune office. Then what is FQDN? FQDN means the name of your node along with the name of your domain will come with FQDN. So if someone want to access this particular client with the help of FQDN, what should I type? I should type something like this. Go to mangesh.pune.capgemini.com. Correct? What is the meaning of this? Is nothing but your FQDN. Okay, that contains your name. Okay, it contains your name. Now here they are giving you the website example, but FQDN contains your name along with your domain name. Correct? It could be a website that would be considered as FQDN. Correct? So FQDN is a fully qualified domain name where you want to access your website or server. You have to mention that FQDN name or whatever option you are selected. Correct? So these are talking about names. We talked about name, we talked about domain name. Correct? So everything we are going to talk about called as name on that particular machine, because most of the time name of the machine would be the appropriate way to access it rather than IP addresses. You might experience that. Correct? This is the small activity would be done. Correct? Now name resolution. Now this is very important server. Okay? It is called as DNS server who can do this particular job.
Thanks for watching. Want to study further? Join our training programs today.